chair.
Oh, we need cameras.
We're working on it.
All right, Alexa, stop. Man, I'm loving the Alexa. How's your day going? You're in San Francisco right now.
I am. So I'm almost. No, you're further. You're further ahead than I am. So it's still late morning for me.
That's a good time, though.
It is a great time.
How cold is it over there?
My expense reports and all the boring stuff I needed to do today. So the rest of the day is looking like fun work. I love it.
That's what we're talking about. Lots of fun. Okay, so is it snowing over there?
There is no snow over here, although all my friends from the East Coast, all the way from Canada down to Florida, are telling me that it's cold.
Oh yeah, I looked on the Google. Somebody calls me up. He says, "Hey, you see what's going on in North Carolina?" I'm like, "I don't monitor weather in places I don't live." He's like, 30,000 people are without power, and it's like crazy with the snow. I'm like, okay.
I lived in North Carolina about 10 months ago. I moved to San Francisco in the spring for a gig here. And now I'm about to move to Toronto, so go figure.
Ooh, Canada.
Haha.
What's going on up there?
Well, first of all, that's where I'm originally from, Quebec more specifically, so that's where the French accent comes from. But yeah, in Canada, I've got a startup I've been working with for 2 years now, Equibit. And we're just about to launch our crypto, our ICO, our blockchain, and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna go make sure that the quality of the product is there, and do some quality assurance for the team for the next couple of months.
It's one of the most important parts. Somebody has to be responsible for the quality.
I know. And I was listening to your podcast with who was the guy talking about AI just a few days ago, and you guys were talking about quality. Yeah. I was taking notes.
Dude, Bruno's awesome.
I know, it was great.
He's a really smart guy. I like to follow up with him, and I was talking with him, and then even the fund that invests in them. I sent a message to his investors. I was like, guys, Bruno's really smart. They replied like, yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. How have your nerves been this week watching the fear and greed play out in the crypto market?
I've been in it since the beginning. I had Bitcoins before Bitcoins had a value. And I lost them too. There's all sorts of crazy stories we can go into. But yeah, I've seen it go up and lose, 80% of its value quite a few times now. So I'm just holding. That's what I do.
Yeah, and I didn't get in on it super early, but I did get on it way earlier than the public. So everything, when I watch the account go up and down, I'm just like, it's never gone down more than I put into it. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Oh, darn. I'm only making 5 times my initial amount, right?
Right. It was 20x and now it's only 5x.
I know. Oh.
I actually did sell some of the Bitcoin. Well, it wasn't Bitcoin, but I sold some of my crypto today because my MacBook Pro the hard drive started clicking. And I'm like, I'm not a hardware expert, but I know it shouldn't click. So right before this call, I just went and got one of those $1,200 iMac, like 21 inch. They're powerful, man.
So had it not been for my stupidity and a problem with my iMac, I would probably have tens of millions of dollars worth of crypto today, but I lost hundreds of Bitcoins, I'm sure, using an iMac years and years, way back when they had no value. I didn't really care, but yeah, it's a great computer.
Right, and now that's why Christian's now officially Team Microsoft.
I am now using a Microsoft computer, yes. I love their new Surface line.
I want to see a chart of a graph showing me how much crypto has been lost on Microsoft crashes versus Mac crashes.
That would be so funny, yes.
There's some creative marketing that a crypto company could do. Everybody would laugh and share that, right?
Totally. And then you could self-report. Maybe you get a token to incentivize self-reporting on how much crypto have you lost in the past. Please
and
provide details.
And then after you hit submit, tears just fall out of the screen.
Well, I use it all the time. Obviously, it's a fun personal story, right? The fact that it could have been like a wealthy, independent, no need to work kind of thing, but I didn't manage my keys properly. So here's lesson number one in crypto, right? Be careful where you put your keys and how you save them and who you share them with potentially, right? Even if it's multi-sig keys and all that, I mean, you have to trust someone, and if you only trust yourself, you'd better know what you're doing, which I clearly didn't way back in those days.
So now, are you into the hardware wallets right now? Or are you just doing paper stuff, or like how are you managing your security for crypto?
I think diversification is your friend, right? So I'm
Yeah.
all over the place. I've got some hardware wallets. I have paper wallets. I have friends that hold paper wallets for me. So I guess I trust them. I have accounts at exchanges where I don't
Mm.
have the keys, and I have various copies of various blockchains on different servers where I also have keys. So it I don't know. It's a little confusing. I have a password database that supposedly tracks it all.
Yeah, I'm not worried about security. I have like, I don't know, 3.5 million in Mount Gox. So
Oh.
I'm not worried about it at all. It's totally safe.
But the funny thing with Mt. Gox though, right? This was kind of a historical first, meaning that they went bankrupt, right? Because volatility, and they were scamming their clients and whatnot. So, as I understand it, I'm not
But
an
mostly
expert on this
volatility.
stuff. But the volatility took them down, and they went bankrupt. So the court took over the company in Japan, right? But now, with even the reserves, whatever Mt. Gox had of crypto, they are now solvent again.
Really? They
Crypto's gone
exist?
up so much. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Oh.
I don't know that they exist as an operating entity anymore, because they did go through a portion of the bankruptcy proceeding at
Mhm.
least. But now there's more assets in the company's name than there's creditors to reimburse. So I don't know what they're gonna do with it.
No, I have very limited knowledge about Mt. Gox. I just have a couple friends that are really into crypto, and they were in from the beginning. And
Yeah.
I remember getting a few sad text messages.
Oh no, it was. I mean, even to this day, you look at the influence of any one of the major players in the crypto space, and it's undue influence in a way that the market is so small that one popular person, you take John McAfee for example, and I follow him right on Twitter, because when he speaks, if you don't listen, you're gonna miss out on things. Not that he's just this super great, oracle of prescience. He just has a lot of people that follow him, and the market is small enough that one influential guy like this can have a significant influence.
Dude, he's a little crazy though.
Oh, he's totally special. I don't know what the right words are, because yeah, he's. But I think he's finding a new life in the crypto space. I mean, he was obviously always an eccentric individual, and now he's found a place that is filled with eccentrics. Not unlike me, to be honest. I've got a little bit of eccentric point of views on different things, but. But yeah, crypto allows him to find a place where he can, I think, show a lot of relevance now in the modern age.
So I haven't heard about him in a long time, right? Because obviously, McAfee software, right? But so I'm at a photo shoot and with this guy named Robert, and he has a crypto exchange in town, and he's been on crypto since like he was doing it with video games, right?
Yep.
And we've been friends for about, I don't know, 7, 8 years now. So we know each other pretty well, and he was doing a photo shoot for like his company About page, like whole team shots and everything.
Yep.
And so he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, I was talking to, he's like, I was listening to your show. You should have John McAfee on the show. I was talking to him at a conference the other week, at a crypto conference. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, yeah. So I said, okay. So I text my PR person, Jenny, and I said, hey, Jenny, reach out to John McAfee's team. He's looking for exposure, and we'll have him on the show, right? And so she goes, okay, cool. She reaches out to him. Later that night, I'm, thinking, well, why don't I look this guy up and learn a little bit more about him, right? So I look up his Twitter, and he's like, oh, I use crypto to buy hookers and like weed, cocaine. I'm like, oh man, this guy is like awesome and horrible at the same time. Like, I would love to hang out with him, but I wouldn't love anyone knowing I hung out with him.
Well, I've never hung out with him, but I'm sure it's a fun time. uh, that said, I think it's important that we have another person I like to follow is Kim.com, another very unique individual, if you will, in the world, right? But I find that these are the personalities who, in the crypto space, which, as you know, there's a lot of politics right around crypto, and so these are the wealthy individuals who have a brand right associated with their names, and they're not afraid to use it to come out and say things that some of us think often, not necessarily about prostitution and crypto, but but about political stances or approaches or disruptions that are needed and yet to happen, potentially through crypto technology. And yeah, these guys speak out. So don't always have to be in agreement with them, but I think there's still value in listening to what they're talking about.
I agree that any of those people that have established such a big brand and have entered the market in such a large way, you definitely should not ignore them, right? You shouldn't write them off because they happen to be interesting as humans in their spare time, right?
Even if you totally disagree with them, right? If you follow John McAfee because you're going to do the exact opposite of what he does, he still has some market power and influence over crypto today. So it's still wise to do.
Yeah. See, I have a question. I've been
Sure.
talking about this quite a bit on my email. It's a bunch of different CTOs. We're talking a lot about voice technology, right?
All
The
right.
Alexa and the Google Home. Do you have
Yeah.
either?
I have none, and I
Oh
can tell
no.
you why too if you want to
Yes.
talk about it. Oh yeah,
Let's do
no,
it.
it's a great question because I was listening to you again in a previous interview talking about how you loved, your device, and I'm like, oh man. So I'm I'm one of those technology guys who is reeling back a little bit from some of these technologies, not because I am not passionate about it, not because I mean I want the Star Trek future like most guys my age who got into computers in the in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
So yeah, no, that's what I want. My problem with most quote unquote intelligent agents and assistants like this today is that it's all out of my control. It is all centralized into these cloud infrastructures that are way beyond me. And one of the things that attracts me to uh, crypto star, right? Cryptocurrencies, crypto technologies, peer-to-peer, blockchain, and all that, is the fact that we finally have a network protocols, which is what they are, right? We finally have network protocols that allow the end peer, right, the leaf of all these trees, us, the individuals, to have more control over who and what and when and how our data is used. And so my passion for cryptography, not just in terms of peer-to-peer networks, but also just in terms of privacy and encryption, has always been to find ways to give back a little bit of that control that we used to have, right? When you in the 90s and the 80s, when you used to decide who you share your credit card number even with, right? That used to be a thing, protect your credit card. Nowadays, we just throw our credit cards all over the place and nobody cares. And I find that we have been desensitized to the importance of privacy in a free society. And so to me, cryptocurrencies and blockchains and all these technologies are very much a way that I try to build systems that help re-empower the individual a little bit. And so, back to your question about the Alexa and all that, I would love an Alexa that I could run on a local server, or at least an environment where I know what happens to my data. But as it is, this all goes out to the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons and these large organizations that I have very little control over, and if none at all, and there goes my data. Right. So to me, there's there's a bit of a dystopian future that is associated with that. So I'm gonna try to find a way to go build an Alexa one day that you control 100%. And if you don't want Alexa to share your data with other companies, or if you do, because that's actually what you want to do with your data, you don't want it sitting in a database. You want to monetize it. And that's what I tell my corporate clients when they ask me what they can do with blockchain. I said, oh, well, you have a database with data you don't share? I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go share it and make money with it. It's a new source of revenue for you. Well, it can be that for an individual as well, and I look forward to that day.
Yeah, that's your go-to. I mean, right? So a lot of companies, I actually had one in my office yesterday. They were sitting on a mountain of data and they came in and wanted to talk about X. And I said, oops, look over here. You've got some low-hanging fruit that can make you a lot of money. Pay attention to that. And they're like, oh, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, blockchain for the first time, we're able to create digital scarcity, right? We're able to create a unique set of ones and zeros on this network that someone can say, no, that is a different sets of ones and zeros and that one over there. And of course you need a blockchain to validate that unique that unique record, but it also opens up all sorts of crazy new possibilities that were just impossible before with information technology at large.
So I get your voice technology stance, right? You want the version of it where you are in complete control, right? Which I am fully on board with. I would love to see what some of those systems will look like that give us control but still provide the benefit. Valid argument. Definitely. Correct. That's a conference talk for you, Christian. Right? Well, what does a system look like? That is a great one. But in this, I want to look at it. I want to look at the same question, but from a different perspective. What I want to take. I often find myself when I'm looking at a subject like a technology, my initial reaction is I'm emotionally attached, and I'll explain. Like, I think about how I feel about it as a consumer, as the first gut reaction, and then secondarily, I have to consider it as a business action. So at first, I'm like, the first time I heard about Alexa, I was like, I don't want them recording my stuff all day. I don't want this. I don't want that. So it took me, a year or two or three, however long. I just got one this Christmas, so relatively new, to actually get it and get involved with it because of my personal feelings. The thing that forced me to do it was I'm getting my hair cut, and my hairdresser's talking about how her 11-year-old daughter wants an Alexa for Christmas, and every kid in the class wants an Alexa for Christmas, and her husband wants an Alexa for Christmas. And that said to me, like, ding, 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 like the market is, you can't ignore it, right? Go to bed.
And if you don't embrace it, you're going to be left behind, or I'm going to be left behind in this case, because I don't know how an Alexa works, to be honest. And if an entire generation is going to be hooked up on Alexa, I'll be that guy trying to figure out how to work a smartphone. So I don't want to be that either. So it's a balancing act. I agree.
You'll look like me trying to figure out Snapchat.
Oh, what's funny? Yesterday or 2 days ago, I was at a crypto conference here in San Francisco, the World Crypto Economic Forum, I believe, and I was talking there about a few things, and in the conference, the one thing that kept coming up over and over is how everyone needs a Telegram account nowadays in 2018 because that's a cool thing to do. And I'm talking, with some contacts over there about one of the companies I work with in Toronto, Equibit. And Equibit is on Slack. And I heard you talk about how Slack is wonderful as well. And that's what Equibit uses as well. And yet Slack is so, last year, apparently. Apparently all the cool new crypto companies this year, they're all on Telegram. So, see, there we go. Even in the choice of chat app, you got to stay up to date.
Yeah, and I never even got into the side of things, and I'm sure some of the people are listening are like cringing right now. But there's on all the websites, everyone has like apparently public Slack channels. I just see Slack icons on everyone's website, so I'm assuming I can interface with their company by clicking on it. Yeah. However, I've yet to do it, like ever. Like I've never been like, oh, I want to go into their Slack channel and talk with them.
I know, and ironically though, that is a little bit what I'm asking for, right? I'm asking for, hey, I don't like these large, networks that are so controlled by so many other organizations, like Twitter, for example, right? When you put something on Twitter, I mean, it's gone, right? Everybody can see it, and it's never getting off the internet, even when you delete it, apparently. But on Slack, that can be a private channel, right? If I trust my service provider for whatever, my cell phone or whatever, and they have a Slack channel, I can trust or think that at least when I post something there, I'm talking directly to them and not to a bunch of other companies. And yeah, so I am looking for, in a way, more decentralization in our communication protocols as well, and Slack definitely can provide some of that. So I definitely respect the technology.
No, Slack is great. I was talking with Marty Kagan not too long ago, and he's got a lot of friends over there, like April Underwood's their chief of product, and she's just having a baby right now. So I love to her. And then you mentioned Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, this just came up, right when you said Twitter, it popped in my head. So I figured, we'll talk about it. Have you ever seen when, like on a government related Twitter account or like FBI or something, it's like all tweets across the internet are stored like in servers and everything's permanent. Have you ever seen that message before?
No, I have not.
Okay, go mess with
And of
some
course,
government.
I'm well desensitized to all the small print, so I am a good, drone, and I do not read the small print. So,
Of course.
I might have just totally glazed over it.
Oh, no. It's like in the text in their profile, man.
Oh,
It's like,
geez.
it's like, oh, this is the Department of Security. Every tweet you mention us in and every tweet we tweet with you, like, is recorded for government. Like, and all I can think about is like, man, at least tweets are small because the amount of storage money that they're wasting, like saving these tweets offline off of the platform is just like such waste.
I was at another conference, I forgot where, but and there was a law enforcement agency there, and the gentleman talking on stage was saying how in the modern day, at least in large city law enforcement, Facebook and Twitters are becoming quickly their number one source of information for knowing about crimes and whatnot, or knowing about us. So yeah, I would not go and brag too loudly about your cryptocurrency profits in 2017 on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Oh, we got a call in from
you
the.
know everybody else looking.
We have that's funny, Christian. We actually have a call in right now from the IRS. Dear
Oh.
Joel. Block. No, we won't even mention the stingrays, and I don't even know if you've heard about those, but they are. Have you heard about stingrays?
I have not, other than the fish.
Okay, they're these systems that local law enforcement can purchase, and they sniff out and decrypt your signals from your phone so that they can, illegally listen into phone calls.
Got it. Yeah, they're the fake cell phone, the fake
Fake
cells for
yeah,
the cell
yep.
phone network. Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard of those.
Dude, you can Google it. You can like they don't even try to hide it. They're like, we're Stingray Systems. Like, you can buy us if you're a local law enforcement agency. They just don't message it so clearly and explicitly about what they actually do.
The pretense are quickly dropping, I find, in these recent years, and yeah, I some of these developments in how our society at large, I guess, is handling new technologies like this. Yeah, I'm not totally a fan of some of how some of this technology is being used. At the same time, yeah, it's a two-edged blade, right? It works the other way too. The way that we as individuals are now empowered to communicate and exchange information in ways that were never seen before. And we saw it with the election cycle last year, or 2 years ago now, I guess, with the amount of focus around fake news, right? and whether you think the alternative news is fake or the mainstream media news is fake, it doesn't, the position doesn't really matter. The fact is that there is now a dialogue about the fact that people can exchange informations in ways that can be truthful or not, but that can now also compete with the centralized media establishment. That is a development that I do welcome in our in our societies through technology.
Yeah, I've learned so much by watching the elections as far as marketing and communications,
Ah, jeez.
right?
Yes, indeed. Yep.
Like it's like watching a case study and like the most expensive marketing campaign in the world unfold right before you every 4 years. It's just there's so much good information in it.
I believe that is an accurate description of an election cycle.
Yeah, so everybody's all upset about their side, their topic, or anything, and I'm like sitting there taking marketing notes. I'm like, all right, he's using short, simple terms. He's being ultra repetitive, okay, and you never answer a question directly. You always have a pre-done topic you want to talk about, and you completely ignore the question. And like it, like, and I just it's so interesting how much you can learn by two different people looking at the same situation, but just very differently, right?
Oh, absolutely, and I've learned. It's funny. I actually actually learned the same kind of couple of bullet points there. Don't answer the question. Make sure you have your message and answer the question with your message, regardless of whether it fit the question or not. Which are all the things that I try to be a good consultant to my clients when I work with them, right? And I like working maybe even less formally than many people, because that allows me a way to express technology in ways that I find is more truthful, more beneficial for the parties involved and whatnot. And yeah, when I look at the rules of how to be elected in office, it seems like all the all the rules are exactly what I don't do when I try to do a good job for my clients.
Security question for you. You seem really bright in the security space. So I got a security/business question. You've got both of those topics pretty nailed down. Do you think that there's going to be a reckoning with the amount of funding that's going into things that should be secure, but there's such a volume of cash being infused into such a small space so fast that I see inexperienced talent getting picked up and paid big dollars to do things that should be done very slowly and correctly and securely, but they're not. They're flying by the seat of their pants. And I'm like kind of watching this wave build, and I'm like, I think there's going to be a big security issue, like large security issues in the next coming years with poorly built technology built rapidly, too much money, not enough talent. What do you think?
Well, you're describing, I think, multiple events that have already happened, definitely in the blockchain space where I tend to spend most of my time. But you look at the Ethereum blockchain, which of course is a marvel of modern, uh, you know, information architecture and engineering, right? They call it the world computer, meaning you can actually now have other people execute and validate your code, and you pay them for it all automatically on this network. It's fantastic. But it is also, I mean, they call themselves Turing complete blockchain, meaning that you can program anything on Ethereum, and if you fund it properly, it will run. But the problem is that it is also Turing vulnerable, and that leads to what you're suggesting there, right? The fact that it is, and I think there's a group that did an analysis last year. They picked like 1,000 line of code from a mature piece of software, like Microsoft Windows operating system or something like that. And I will not say numbers because I totally forgot the reference, but I'll have to Google it again. But they said, look, in a mature piece of modern software, you can expect like so many bugs per 1,000 line of codes, right? Let's say the number is 5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And on an average, and the same group did they grabbed a bunch of smart contracts from the Ethereum blockchain, and they said on an Ethereum or on a crypto smart contract, that number is 100 times more, right? So that speaks exactly to what you're saying. It's new. To be honest, most of us don't know what we're doing, right? And I'll include myself in it. I mean, every day there's a brighter guy than me out there that comes up with a new, better way to do better consensus, better decentralization, faster number of transactions per seconds, and this and that. And it is exhausting just to keep up with the market. And just like in the .com days, 90% plus of the companies that I work for, that pay my rent right now, most of these companies are unfortunately not going to survive. But those that do will be the new standards, right? The new standards for your healthcare record, the new standards for the supply chain for your food, the new standard for your money, for your investments. So it's very immature, but at the same time, these companies are raising dozens, hundreds, and sometimes over $1 billion. Isn't Telegram right now a chat app, right? A sophisticated, encrypted, peer-to-peer, whatever chat system. But still, I've heard that they're raising multiple hundreds of millions, if not close to $1 billion right now. And it's mind-boggling. What do you do with $1 billion? You create a new standard. That's what you do. So a lot of the things we are used to use today will be replaced by these large companies that are being formed right now and creating new technologies with, unfortunately, probably a lot of bugs in them. So yeah, there's a lot to be worried about there.
All right. You just gave me like an arsenal of stuff to respond to. So, first of all, I love talking to you because you are tickling my brain, right? New standard. So I've had a couple ideas, and I just think about them all the time. So I see so little money going into forming standards, and everybody wants to make a product, and everybody's trying to fund products in an area because that's what they can sell to investors. But I want to try to sell the idea of funding a standard, they don't get it. Like I can explain it clearly. I can put the benefits out there, and I've never formally pitched this. I just work with investor guys all the time. So I just, mention it to them on calls. Like, what are your thoughts on, funding someone to come up with like a standard, right? And they just don't want to do with anything. They don't see the ROI. They can't see, I'll put product in the market, put marketing behind it, get stuff back. So, but whoever does that wins big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Totally agree. I mean, you just described my last year with a startup in the blockchain space that I worked with. That we tried to do things. We tried to bring crypto, but to pitch that to traditional VC investors because it was a traditional industry in the food space, right? With farmers and agriculture, organizations that are not necessarily looking at the latest and the greatest technology, and the investors, at least the traditional VCs, just don't know what to do, and it's because it's the ICO, or the way to raise money in the blockchain space, is so alien. And again, it goes back to these standards. It is alien because on an ICO, you promise a vision, right? As you would, I guess, if you're pitching your company to an investor. But it's nothing about, there's nothing about necessarily revenue. Well, there is, but the revenue is not the focus, right? The number of clients is not the focus. The focus of an ICO investor is about how are you going to grow that network? How are you going to build that viral network effect that will bring everybody to your blockchain? So you take Telegram, right? Telegram competes with Slack and the other dozen of different chat apps I have on my computer. It's super annoying. I can't wait for a lot of them to just disappear or be absorbed in others, because right now I don't know where to look when I need to check if I'm up to date on everything. I've got like 10 different chat apps.
Yeah.
But Telegram is just raising hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. They're not raising that because they're hundreds of millions of times better than Skype or Slack or whatever else. They're doing that because they're promising a vision. They're promising a vision of a network in the future, a service that's going to be text messaging and community organization. I actually don't know the business case for Telegram, but it is going to be a communication infrastructure that they are raising, again, hundreds of millions of dollars to promote and develop. So that will become a new standard. So their approach to money in an ICO is very, no wonder the governments don't like it, right? You go out to the market, right? You go to a Bitcoin conference, or you open up a Telegram or a Slack channel or something, right? And you go to the market and you say, I'm going to improve our communication tools. I'm called Telegram, and here's what I'm going to do for you. And then you launch an ICO and people give you money for it. So it's totally upside down, right? You're pitching a vision, and people give money to that vision. Why? Well, for most of it is greed, right? Everyone, has seen the Bitcoin, so now everyone wants to be a millionaire next week. But other than that, the real reason why some of us are actually so passionate about it is because Telegram will be the new standard for encrypted communication in the future. And there's a lot of people trying to get that standard, right? Twitter, Amazon, open whisper system, right? They have their protocol, which is being implemented in Skype right now, I think. So there's a lot of battles for these protocols, and ICOs are how the protocols of the future are being funded right now, and they will become our standards for the future. So there's a lot of money being invested in standards right now. It just doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it's being invested by the people.
It's being invested by people into entrepreneurs, 90% of whom I'm sure their business will not succeed. So most of those coins are going to be worth nothing a few years from now. But the coins that are going to be worth something are going to be worth a lot, because now you're going to own a little part of the infrastructure for money, for data exchange, for you name it. The crypto is getting in every industry right now.
So here's what I'm looking for. Okay.
All right.
I thought of it the other day, mentioned it once or twice. Had this idea, we're talking about standards. I want to create a standard for how memories, sort of like stories, memories, story-based memories, are stored, consumed, transacted, like put in, put out, for artificial intelligence to consume.
Yes.
Okay. I want to have a whole data structure of, let's say, the concept of nostalgia, right? Where I can actually organize the data in a way that I can put in the future a artificial system on there, machine learning style system on there, where they can consume that information in a way where they could consume all those stories and then comprehend the concept of nostalgia. Now that's something,
beautiful.
right?
That's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, because whoever creates the thing where you can craft these concepts, I don't need an AI to even be able to do it today, right? All I need to do is create the standard and put so much content out there, put so much information that when the technology hits 2, 3, 5 years, that there will be this massive library that the developers will have no choice but to figure out how to adapt it to my standard. And that's what we're talking about. That's the arbitrage. Yeah,
that's similar to Ray Kurzweil's vision of how he hopes or plans to, in a way, resurrect his father, right? His father is deceased, and Ray collects and has amassed, according to the books that I've read, right? I've never met Ray Kurzweil, but from what I understand, he is actually capturing as much as he can from the mimetic legacy of his father, so that as soon as we have complex enough computers and structures and intelligences to simulate a human mind, he's going to dump all that data in there, and hopefully that system will be able to play back a ghost of his father, essentially. And today there's a lot of various brain mapping systems out there. Even some of them are free, open source as well, where you can get started on that, right? You start capturing, instead of writing in a journal at night, you open up your brain map and you start documenting what's going on. You start categorizing your pictures on your brain map. You can relate pictures with other areas of your brain map, and next thing you know, you have as accurate of a representation of your mind as we can do manually today. And that can indeed become a very, very powerful, but at the same time, where do you put that brain map, right? Are you going to store it on the Google Cloud? Because that map, if it's good, it's going to be able to deduce, most of your passwords, most of your identities, most of the things that are personal to you. So where do you store your backup, right? And that's there's a great sci-fi book called Walk Away, where that question is explored, and it's
the title gives it away.
Yeah, exactly. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, so where I'm seeing it, so I haven't read the Ray Kurzweil. Is that how you say his name, Ray Kurzweil?
I think so, yeah.
But the first point that comes to mind is nobody cares about his dad. right? like
Of course.
don't care, bro. Secondly, if you're developing a system of your memory to use your dead father's thing, like it's not what it's too far off for me. The second thing is I have no interest in replicating myself or making myself real. Here's the arbitrage that I see. The thing that's actually going to make money in the next 2 to 5 years. The reason why you should start this system that I'm talking about today and actually make money in 2, 3, 4 years is because we will want Alexa to be able to do more than just give us basic information. I want to ask Alexa like how her day went, and then I want her to start responding about her friend Jen, and then I want her to learn how to lie a little bit to make up facts so that then her and Jen went to the store, and then like I want to create stories that you give a base to, and then they can lie a little bit, and they have this concept and understanding, and it's not like there's consciousness. It's like, oh, of course, all algorithms, but that they can morph these base stories and build upon them, and then start creating larger structures. And I just think it would be beautiful because people will want that. We will want that right away. There's guys that like date text robots. I mean, that's already happening. It's just not popular.
Oh, there was a recall on, I think, the original iBot, the Sony dog robot from I don't know, the early 2000s in Japan. And there's a documentary that I saw about this online somewhere where this woman wanted her robot fixed, and I think Sony doesn't support the robot or anything like that, so she couldn't find a place, and she wanted a funeral for her robot dog because that dog had been with her for years, and she had definitely bonded with a mechanical person, I guess. And she wanted a funeral for her Aibo dog. So and same thing with Kurzweil. I mean, to me, it's the individual motivation obviously is important to the individual. Doesn't mean that I care whether the ghost of someone else's father comes back, but we need to recognize though that is what motivates Ray Kurzweil, right?
Right.
And that guy has invented and done a lot and continues to do a lot, right, at Google. And when I look at even an anonymous person like Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that he, she, they are, they have motivations, right, that are explicitly stated in the white papers and whatnot. And while most people today that utilize these technologies have very different goals and objectives, and rightly so. This is not a negative judgment on anyone. It is important to also recognize what motivates the innovators that give us some of these innovations, because that's an indication of what motivates innovators today, right? That are going to give us the innovation of tomorrow, like the things you're talking about here. So.
And I'm sure I super glazed over like Ray's whole thing for like a one sentence comment from you. Like I'm sure he's got like a lot, like that snap comment obviously is not like like I don't know him. Like I don't know his story. I know a passing comment you saying he's trying to make his dead dad's ghost. So like I'm sure there's a lot more to that, right?
And I'll apologize to anyone I mention on this podcast. If you're mentioned in this podcast, it's because I respect you in a way. And,
right, there we go.
And so sometimes I speak a little too, candidly, and it may not come out quite politically correct.
I can't wait till Ray walks
because
up.
I don't like being politically correct. So there.
I can't wait till Ray walks up to me at a conference. He's like, "What up, bro?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, Ray."
I heard your podcast with this dude Christian, and he got it all totally wrong. And let me explain to you.
I know.
That'd be great.
And then he tells me, he goes, "Yeah, and by the way, I've completely mastered that technology, and I get to hang out with my dad's ghost all the time. And no, you and your dead mom can't use it." I'll be like, "Oh man."
Oh, hey, do you want to meet my dad?
Okay, I'm going to write a book on relationships, right? I'm going to call it Everything's an Object. There we go.
Today, when you look at augmented reality, virtual reality, you mentioned AI. Another big phenomenon is obviously the Internet of Things, right?
Yeah.
When you bring all that together with peer-to-peer networks and protocols, what we're seeing is really the beginning of I guess our virtual universe awakening, right? We are capturing a more and more precise, in terms of resolution, virtual image of our world, right? Through sensors everywhere in our pockets, in our computers, in our my light on right next to me is programmable now, right? And it knows the light around it, and every we have so much information about the world through IoT. We're bringing that together, and I think the best way to do that is using peer-to-peer systems. Otherwise, that data ends up in private repositories that are hard for the rest of us to access. So the IoT systems that will connect to blockchain will become the blockchain becomes kind of the bloodstream of all that data, the sensory network of humanity, if you will, right? And at the center of it are going to be a bunch of intelligent agents, automated or not, who are going to now make sense of this massive amount of information and help us make better decisions in the future. So I think IoT, blockchain, and AI are intrinsically linked to one another. They all need one another in different in their respective areas, and that's happening now.
That's yeah, because so often people say, "Oh, it's the future. It's the future. I'll worry about it in the future." And often I'm like, "Nope, it's right now."
It's, I mean, and this is, I guess, I'm going to quote Kurt Sewell again. I'm
Oh,
sound like
there we go.
a fanboy, but he talks a lot about exponential growth, right?
Oh, yeah.
Better technology allows you to build better technology, and so it multiplies. It doesn't just add up.
Can you figure out how?
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you go. Yeah.
Nope, I apologize. My mic drop didn't work.
Well, all I was going to say is that when you figure that out, you realize that no, the future really is now. If you're interested in something in the future, whether it's AI or big data analytics or virtual reality or blockchain, don't wait. It's happening today, and it's not too late today, right? We're still, I think, in the early days. But if you don't catch up today, it's going to be real hard. I mean, I read some of what I call the third generation blockchain systems now. Things like AOS, being built by Block.one, the Dan Larimer crew. You read the architecture of that blockchain. I don't even know if it's a blockchain anymore. Cosmos, they call themselves blockchain of blockchains. And now there's multiple dimensions of these blockchains. I mean, it's becoming much more sophisticated than the traditional, Bitcoin blockchain that we some of us may be familiar with. So jumping on the bandwagon early allows you to have these insights that will allow you to make a lot of money with these technologies, with business opportunities in the future. But if you wait for the future, you're going to be a little bit behind the curve there. Things are moving fast, and even blockchain, I think, is not going to remain forever. I think we've got another couple of years of that before even that label will probably disappear from our vocabulary, being replaced by some other cool P2P, peer-to-peer type system.
Yeah, now I got to read Ray Kurzweil. I'm so intrigued by this individual now.
He is not unlike. He is also a controversial person. Let's just say that.
So you have done work in finance, supply chain, healthcare, real estate, cannabis distribution. What is the most interesting project, like the past decade, that comes to your mind, like first when I ask you, like, what was most interesting to you personally first?
I quit my corporate world where I was, good upper mid-level manager type thing, director and VP level type things, where while the organizations I worked for were good companies, IBM. I worked for IBM for almost 8 years. Respect the organization a lot. Still work with them. Obviously, they're everywhere, right? So I encounter them all the time. And while the projects there were exciting, I didn't feel the impact, right? I didn't feel they were impactful. So when I quit my corporate life in order to try to learn to become an entrepreneur, which, by the way, is not easy, but
Nope.
It only takes a few years if you put your heart into it, and you're going to hurt, you're going to stress, you're going to change your lifestyle. But at the end of these few years, those who dare make that move, I mean, I am so much happier, wealthier in so many ways. So, in a way, my answer to your question, I guess, is biased because, of course, the projects that I've done in the later years, where I am a entrepreneur, if I may bestow that title on myself, those projects, while maybe smaller in impact, yet have provided me with a lot more satisfaction than what I've done in the past. So all that said, I think probably the most fun one would have been the Ripe.io blockchain of food that I focused on last year in 2017. And I'm no longer with that project. Project continues on in various ways, but the idea of using a peer-to-peer system, blockchain, to solve a problem in the food supply industry. And a lot of companies are addressing that today, right? IBM and Walmart, for example, are doing provenance and traceability so that they can do recalls and food safety. There's a million great cases for that, for blockchain in the food supply chain space. What we focused on, because you don't necessarily just go head to head against IBM, you gotta have your niche, right? So our niche was about stories. It's exactly what you're talking about. Our niche was like, well, we're not gonna beat IBM to provenance and global supply chains, but one of the big problem in a food supply chain is the fact that the consumer doesn't know where the food comes from and what's been done to it. And guess what? The farmer also wants to know the consumer, whether the consumer likes their food and whatnot. But the supply chain in the middle is so opaque, it is unable to carry along, because they carry the food, obviously we eat every day, so the food moves. But moving the data along with the food is too expensive today. It's prohibitively expensive. And there's paperwork, obviously, every time food moves from one company to another. But that paperwork is minimal, and it's whatever the government wants to know. That's very different than what you and I want to know when we're about to bite in a hamburger, right? So that information exists, it's just not being shared today. So one of the things that, when you wonder whether blockchain is a good system for your problem or not, blockchain is a network that helps a group of unknown people reach a consensus, right? Reach an agreement. And the agreement can be about anything depending on what you want to program in your smart contracts and in your blockchain. In the case of food, the agreement was about, hey, can we provide an incentive for people who have information about our food to share that information, those stories you talk about? And that's what blockchain does. Sure, I'll pay you fractions of a millibit of something, right, in exchange for knowing when this tomato was taken from the field, in exchange for knowing whether the packaging is using recycled materials or not, or whether the employees were paid fairly, or blah, 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 blah. There's a million things we want to know about our food. And so we're willing to pay for some of that, not exorbitant amount, obviously, but pennies, even when added up, through a large population. Suddenly the farmer can actually monetize information, stories that they have in their minds, in their databases about our food. There was just no way for us to pay that farmer before, and blockchain provides a very, very real opportunity to do that. And that can be applied to any supply chain. So There we go. There's a lot of opportunities.
Well, that's what I like. I like that this technology that's coming about now today, what it's doing is it's removing all the middlemen. They're gone. Correct. They're going to be gone. They're on their way out. We're waving goodbye to them now, right? But you see it, it's not like in one spot or another spot. It's the market, the whole market. Because what it's doing is it's turning the world into a meritocracy, a borderless meritocracy where we all get to raise our hands and say, we want it this way. Okay, cool, right?
Yep. It's a consensus,
that's what's happening.
And it's a peer-to-peer consensus, and the middlemen, whether they were media or big companies or small companies or that co-op that you just can't get around because they're the only one buying food in town, kind of thing. Yeah, these middlemen are being disintermediated and replaced with with programs. Now, if you're a middleman today, you're like, oh man, I don't like this podcast, right? No. Someone still needs to move the food around, right? There is needs for a lot of agency, but it's the governance of our middlemen, right? How do we control what we want, and how do we allow the market forces to be more effective when dealing with a centralized middleman who may have market power over you because you're just one of the smaller producers of something.
Well,
that's where these peer-to-peer technologies really shine.
A centralized middleman, I was using the wrong word, maybe gatekeepers. First goes the gatekeepers, right? Because the centralized middleman is a gatekeeper. And the people that say, oh, no, I'll be the decider of if this idea should be funded, or I'll be the decider of if we should bring this thing to market, those people, if they find themselves in those places, goodbye. Like,
you mean most VC capital companies?
Why not? Why do I need a VC capital company when the market can make its own decision?
Absolutely. And when someone with a good enough story, and of course these ICOs are going to calm down, right, in coming years. This is the exuberant phase, I guess. But ICOs are here to stay, and IPOs are going to be difficult. In fact, my company that I work with now in Canada, Equibit, we're trying to position our way kind of in the middle of all this, right? Understanding that peer-to-peer and decentralized fundraising is here to stay. How do we do that in a way that is maybe more aligned with the rest of our society, right? And obviously, ICO has taken everyone by surprise, not just regulators, but even investors and businessmen. So, there's a happy middle somewhere that is yet to be found. I believe Equibit Group has a good handle on it, but there's other organizations trying other approaches as well. And it's only the future that'll tell us, who's going to be right and who's going to be wrong.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's so exciting. So exciting. There's never been a more fun time to be alive, I think, than today.
I agree.
And anyone hearing this, if you're bored with your job, if you're insatisfied with anything, these things can be changed. And right now, there's so much opportunity. It takes will. You got to kick yourself out, sometimes of old habits. I know I do that. I try to do that every day, often unsuccessfully, but over time you keep trying, and it's worth it. And it's a very exciting time right now.
I can't wait. And sometimes I even get frustrated. I find myself getting frustrated. Oh, why aren't the companies moving faster? Or why don't they see this market? Why don't they see that this is the opportunity? They're just being some of the larger companies are just being so old and stuck in their ways. And I'm thinking, well, hold on a second now. Eventually they'll see, usually when they're going out of business and they're fighting. So if it's fighting to stay alive. So if I'm doing the right things today, then in 5 years, when they're having serious P&L issues, they're going to be looking around for the market. I'm going to point back to my book. I'm going to be like, dude, I've been saying this for 5 years. Like, I can help you out with your problem, and then I profit, right?
Yep. No, I was talking with very important people in very large food companies over the summer, and they said the top 3 technologies in this case, the food supply chain over the next decade are going to be AI to understand all that IoT stuff, big data visualization so that the humans can understand what the AI just figured out, and then blockchain to move all that data to reward and incentivize the right people in the network to share the right data in a way that is honest, because that's what blockchain does too. When a miner mines a block on the Bitcoin protocol, right, on the Bitcoin blockchain, they are allowed to pay themselves, right? These initial Bitcoins, that's why they're mining in part, right? So that they can get those free Bitcoins at the beginning of every block. Well, they could cheat, right? They could write, 100 Bitcoins instead of, I think right now they get 12 Bitcoins or so every 10 minutes or every block. And so they could cheat about that, but why don't they? Oh, because they know that if they cheat, it's not going to take half a second and the network's going to kick them out, and someone else with the right answer, without cheating, is going to do the right thing. So blockchain really, you can really build incentives for people to follow a behavior that is in demand according to a particular blockchain. If you don't like that blockchain or that behavior that's being incentivized there, you just don't participate in it. I'm not a big fan of Ripple for various reasons. Ripple is a great system. There's a lot of people who like it, but I disagree with some of the way that they manage their consensus, and so I don't participate in the Ripple blockchain. There's other blockchains that have other types of issues, and whatever, right? People can then choose which network, which standard do I want to use. Do I want to use Bitcoin Core, I guess, as it's being called now, or Bitcoin Cash? I don't know. Weren't they both Bitcoin at some point? Yep. Now they're totally different, and it's complex. It's not necessarily easy, but the opportunities are also tremendous. So.
I need to figure, Jake, we need to figure out how to license It's the End of the World as we know, because that's why I feel like I want to play that song as the outro. It's like, I understand the robots ultimately win, and now I'm just hanging out trying to profit on the in-between. That's kind of where my mind's at.
I'll say this, right? If anyone, it doesn't have to be engineers or CTOs and deep technical people, right? Anyone who's interested in technology listening to this podcast, go to a blockchain conference. There's one every week now, almost in, in every quarter of the world. So it's not hard to find a blockchain. It doesn't matter which blockchain or which technology. Go feel the atmosphere. Go sit in a blockchain hall where some guy is talking about, whatever, and feel the energy. You'll never be as optimistic as a group. You'll never see a group as optimistic as you will find in a crypto conference.
And that's not because is the energy so high because McAfee's getting all the drugs?
No. McAfee is typically not at. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's I don't know where he is, right? I've never met him, so I don't know where he goes. It is also not about the drugs, although we could talk about that if you want to talk.
Dude,
about drugs.
No, you know what?
The blockchain of cannabis is fantastic. Medicinal Genomics in Boston has had a Vice article about how they took their cannabis business, and they put some information on the Bitcoin blockchain in their case, and that's won them a Vice article, right? Because their technology is super cool. It's genomic research about relating one strain of cannabis to another one through a phylogenetic. I don't even know how to pronounce it. The genetic tree of DNA. It's fantastic, and they record that on the blockchain to make sure nobody can alter the results, right? And just that, they've essentially created a patent system, a private patent system that dispensaries and large growers are excited to use, because guess what? The government doesn't provide that service. The government says
this
is illegal.
Who are we talking about?
We are talking about Medicinal Genomics. They created a place called, and I don't know if I should be just plugging all these things on your show, but you're not stopping me. So
this is not a plug.
Continue.
This is not a plug.
We're talking about something important. Thank you.
I'm like interested in what you're talking. Here's why I'm interested. You ready for it? I had a call this morning with this awesome gentleman named Roger, and he is CTO of this company called Baker. And they saw a market opportunity with the cannabis becoming legal, and so they built a point of sale system that catered to the cannabis world, right? With all the regulations. It was a special point, because you can't go use Shopify to sell cannabis. You have to sell. It's got certain attributes, and the whole custom system needs to be set up for it. So he saw that opportunity, and he jumped in there, and their company's doing insane. They're growing to 60 plus people in the past year or two, and they're just out. They look beautiful, and they're just absolutely killing it. So when I heard you talking about cannabis stuff, and I saw it in your profile, it's like, oh, well, that's real interesting. And now that you're talking about this sort of blockchain application for cannabis stores, you need to go talk to Roger, because he needs to be aware of this. I'm sure he is. He's a bright guy, but maybe bring it up to him.
I look forward to talk to Roger. It is, cannabis is a growing industry, right? It is.
Pun intended. Yeah.
Pun intended. But it is a great place to invest right now. It is, there's a clear social direction. We're not at the goal yet, right? It's not all legalized everywhere. Therefore, we know there's going to be more demand tomorrow than there is today for this product as it becomes more accepted throughout our society. And yeah, that means business opportunities. So anyone who's already there keep running and keep using these new technologies like blockchain, because the potentials are great, particularly when it comes to payments and money kind of stuff, where again in the cannabis industry it's hard to open a bank account and something that you and I take for granted is not necessarily as easy to do when you're a dispensary or person involved in one of those fringe industries.
Yeah, that's what
Blockchain can
wasn't.
help there.
Yeah, wasn't Dash and a couple other cryptos going for that?
Oh yeah,
Going
oh
for
yeah.
that business real big. Yeah.
And well, I'll just mention it briefly in passing. An industry that I find is not taking advantage of this. That I'm surprised, because every other technological innovation that I've seen in my lifetime since the 70s were very much driven by the sex and the porn industry. The internet and all the web and all that. I mean, initially this was I mean, it's still there, but it was one of the things that made it more accessible to individuals. And I have not seen a lot of that industry in the blockchain space. So yeah, there.
Interesting.
Opportunities.
Yeah, no, that I think I'm gonna pass on brainstorming the blockchain applications for the porn industry. I can like already hear the text messages from Jenny, my PR girl, be like, she's like, all right, Julie, your last step is every other episode. We're talking about like spaghetti code MVP epidemics, rewriting systems. We're talking about making people feel heard and dealing with human capital. And then we've got like cannabis, porn, and the blockchain. But tinfoil.
No, I didn't mean to derail your show. In fact, I started listening to your show in preparation for this. I loved the topics. I've got you on my podcaster feed now, so I'm glad to be a new subscriber to your show myself.
No, we're gonna do a special little thing called Modern CTO After Hours.
Exactly.
So what do you listen to your podcast with? Like, what are you using to listen?
I use an arcade. Well, I don't know if it's arcade. I don't know. I've been using the same app for many years, so I'm pretty sure I am not using the best or the coolest.
No, I just want to know what it is.
I'm on an Android, and I use an app called Podcast Addict.
Podcast
And
Addict.
I use it in part because that list of podcasts is nowhere else but on my phone. Well, of course, so many companies have access to the data on my phone, so I'm sure they can get a copy of that. But it was not a list on a cloud. It was not the list on some other, centrals. So again, you see my desire to control my own information here. But I chose that app specifically because I believe, at least, I control the list of podcasts on it. And if I delete it, it's not remaining on some other database somewhere in the cloud.
Well, you're a valid member of the market and super intelligent. And I'm actually this is why I have such a I let anybody come on the show that I find it. The qualifier for being on the show is that I think you're interesting. Like, I look at people, I think they're interesting. I email them and say, hey, you want to share your experience? So that's like the qualifier. And I love that that's the only qualifier. Like, I don't care if they're Fortune 500 or startup or where they're at, because that gives me a real good feel for the market. Like today, I had an experience with you that reconfirmed that there is a huge market out there for like decentralized local data storage. For example, why you picked your podcast app. You're a part of the market. People want that. That's a feature people want.
It is. We're still a minority, I think, but I think blockchain technology, in part, and while it's not popular, right? Blockchain is not popular with the mass public today. It's going to get there. I think it's going to start a little bit like the web, becoming more of a, at least peer-to-peer technologies will become more and more accepted and this available to the average person. But until we get there, the technologies that exist today, I find, are indicative of that demand for more control, more privacy. Another area that I've done a lot of work with is in healthcare. And when you think about your health information, which, by the way, on the black market, health data is more valuable than financial data, right? People will pay more to know more about your body health than they will to get your credit score.
We got to sell the kidneys,
Yep. Well, I don't know what it is, but the pharmaceutical, they're gonna know how you're sick, so that they can provide you with with new treatments. I don't know, but that also causes an environment where that data is very precious. Uh,
Yeah.
Insurance companies and hospitals and EMR companies are trying to centralize that data, and then you got to protect that database, right? You're gonna put like firewalls upon firewalls and other detection systems just because the data is so valuable. And there's a solution to that. Give the data away. And of course, it's not an intuitive solution, right? Companies would be like, well, no, I need that data because it's part of my business model. Well, no. That data will come back to you, right? As a company, whether I'm a credit agency that gets hacked or a hospital that stores medical information in my database, we don't have all those tools today, but they're being built. The EMR of the next decade is being built right now. That gives the individual the control over their individual data. And when you go to the hospital, you're with the hospital, but you open up your data to the hospital, not the other way around.
Hey,
Right?
this is
You
what I was
don't
talking
ask your
about.
record.
This is what I was talking about at dinner with my over the holidays. My brother and mom are doctors, and I was talking with them about this exact same thing, and they're like, "No, no, no, it'll never be like that." I flipped open Google and like did a quick search or two. There are hundreds of millions of dollars of funding and like 7 different companies actively going after this one task.
There you go. And I
Yeah.
met 2 of them in the blockchain space just earlier this week, right? So it's happening and it's coming. It's not there yet. So someone who, looks at the last, 30 years, 40 years of digitization, slow digitization of, maybe not 40 years of medical information. And you'd be like, no, you're going against, 30 years of history where this is not how it works. Yeah, that's why it's called a disruption. We're about to disrupt 30 years of how we store medical information, and we're going to make it so it's a lot safer. Because then, if the hospital gets hacked, right? If I'm the hospital, I want your name. I don't want your social security number. I mean, I want a way to identify you, obviously, right? So I can keep non-personal data and maintain some continuity that to the extent where it's logical for the hospital. But as soon as it's used to identify you, it's a liability for the hospital. Now there's hackers who want to get in your database, and your clients will sue you when you get hacked. And you will get hacked because there's a lot of hackers out there who, and as long as you keep adding good, valuable data in that little pot of gold over there, people will try to go at it. So the solution is really to create a system where you give the data back to your patients. Guess what? When I get sick, I'll be knocking on your door and I'll be super happy to open up all my records. In fact, I'll have a smart contract that will automatically open up the record to you, because if I'm unconscious, I don't want to have to be in the way of you having access to my record, right? So that data is coming right back to these providers without the risk of saving it into your centralized database. But that
And of
means
course, the
letting
audit
go of
trail.
that control and the oh yeah,
Yeah.
all the regulations surrounding. Imagine the costs, right? People tell me, oh, Bitcoin is wasteful because of all the electricity that is burned to secure the network, right? The miners, when they mine Bitcoin, they are the security, right? This is the security team of Bitcoin and any other blockchain that works using a proof of work algorithm. So, and we can talk about that, how that works, but the idea is that mining Bitcoin you're the police of Bitcoin when you're the miner. And the police of Bitcoin kicks people who try to cheat Bitcoin out of the network. So, if you try to make a false transaction on the Bitcoin network, the miners will reject you and you'll just be ignored. So is that is security in the future, right? And in the future, if you hack my computers, as I have lost Bitcoin keys, I've lost a lot of money on Bitcoin because I was an idiot and I wasn't, keeping my keys properly safe, and I lost them. There's nobody else but me to blame. And if you hack in my computer, you can only steal my Bitcoin, not the Bitcoins of everybody else around.
Right.
So there's a lot of new paradigms there that I think are going to start moving into the world of IT security at large, and it's going to change how we do things in the coming years.
Christian, I can talk to you like all day. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to come up with like a separate set of questions because I want to talk more about healthcare and blockchain and things like that. and we're going to set up another call. And when are you going to be in Canada?
I am planning to be in Canada. I'll be there in the first week of February, and I'll be there again in March.
Awesome.
And then
So
I'll
we'll
probably stay in Canada in March for quite some time.
nice. So we're going to let you get settled into Canada and get some great stories for a couple months up there, and then we're going to have you back on like in the summer, and we're going to like just kill it. I love talking to you, man.
That sounds great. I thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast, and I will be even more familiar with your podcast next time. So maybe I'll avoid certain topics or not. I don't know.
No. Make a list of the topics you should avoid, and then we're only talking about those.
All right. I'm always open to feedback.
Awesome.